Bajaj Auto's share price drops sharply as analysts express concerns over high valuations despite the company achieving record quarterly revenue. Infosys comes out with its second quarter numbers. Company revises revenue growth guidance in CC terms to 3.75% to 4% for FY25. India's largest IPO, Hyundai Motor India, has been subscribed 2.35 times as of 3:30 p.m. on its third final day. With bids led by qualified institutional buyers, the company aimed to raise up to 27,870 crore rupees through a pure OFS. New law in the works to tackle rise in bomb threats in flight. Sources in the Ministry of Civil Aviation tell NDTV the law envisages harsher punishment. Nayab Singh Saini is sworn in as Haryana CM for the second time after BJP wins its third consecutive term in the state. Justin Trudeau admits that Canada has no hard evidence to support its allegations against India, claims based on intel rather than proof. Hello and welcome. This is Profit 360 on NDTV Profit, and I'm your host Mallica Mishra. Along the next half an hour of the show, we'll bring you the latest on markets as well as national and international news. Starting with Infosys has just come out with a strong set of numbers for the second quarter, and Rucha is joining us in the studio with more on this.
Hi, thank you. So, Infosys reported its second quarter numbers. Well, first, let's talk about the guidance. Guidance has been raised from 3 to 4% to 3.75 to 4.5%. Now, this is FY25 revenue growth guidance in constant currency terms. Now, remember that the street was already baking in a 50 basis points hike. So, this is largely in line to little bit above what the street was expecting in terms of guidance upgradation. Now, talking about the numbers, revenue came up by 4.3%, slightly higher than what was estimated. Margin came in at 21.2% versus estimate of 21.4%. So largely in line margin is what we can see over here. Net profit, however, is largely a miss. Net profit came in at 6,506 crore rupees to be precise versus estimate of 6,815 crore rupees. So this is what we have on the numbers. Revenue in line, margin in line, net profit a little bit of miss, guidance in line with what was estimated. Talking about the TCV deal wins, which is another important metric for an IT company. Well, TCV deal wins came in at 2.4 billion this time versus 4.1 billion. So literally half the amount of large deal TCV versus the last quarter is what we can see over here. Let's move on to talking about the BFSI, that is the banking space, which contributes majority of the company's revenue, around 28% of the revenue. Well, in terms of YOY CC, that is constant currency terms, financial services was up by 2.3%. So healthy BFSI growth is what we can see over here. Talking about what TCS reported, well, TCS reported largely flat number in terms of the BFSI segment. North America, which was under pressure even for the TCS, which is a direct peer for Infosys, well, it came in at about flat for TCS. Why for Infosys, North America is down by about 2.7% in terms of CC revenue growth. So mixed numbers over here is what we can see, but largely in line numbers is what we have over here. Okay, but let's move on to talk about Wipro. Well, Wipro, first we'll talk about the guidance. Well, the guidance was expected to come at about negative 0.5 to 1.5% for the third quarter, but the company has guided for a little bit of less than what was estimated. Well, the company has guided for negative 2% to flat in constant currency terms for the third quarter. Remember that Wipro guides for quarterly guidance. So a miss on guidance is what we can see over here. Quickly briefing up on the revenue and the margin numbers. Well, revenue came in up by about 1.5% at 22,300 crore versus estimation of 22,270 crore. So little bit of miss, not much over here. Talking about margin came in flat QOQ at 16.5% versus estimation of 16.3%. Again, in line numbers. Net profit came in at 6.8% growth at 3,200 crore versus estimated number of around 3,000 crore. So summing this up, revenue in line, margin in line, net profit is a beat over here, but guidance, which is one of the major thing, is where Wipro has disappointed the street over here. So this is what we have got from Wipro as well as Infosys. Joining us to discuss more about the Wipro results is Omkar, the senior research analyst at Axis Securities. Well, thanks for joining us. What's your first take on the Infosys major and Wipro as well? Mr. Omkar, can you hear us? Okay, I think there's... Yeah, I think we've lost the line, but till we connect back with Mr. Omkar, let's talk more about the results. Well, IT has been doing well, but let me talk to you more about what Wipro results were. Well, large deal bookings came in at $1.5 billion, and this is the highest in last 10 quarters over here. Operating cash flow versus net income, this ratio came in at 132%. So healthy cash flow conversion is what we can see for Wipro. But moving to IT services, well, the operating margin, as I mentioned, came in 16.8%. But we now have Mr. Chaudhary, the managing director of Global Equities Research, joining us on the show. Well, thanks for joining us, sir. What is your first take on Infosys?
I think these numbers are very good considering the economic backdrop of the industry.
Can you hear us?
I think Infosys executed very well, and I think these are very welcome numbers.
Sure. What do you think about the BFSI space?
I think the space is struggling, at least from a macro conditions perspective. But I think Infosys has executed very well. There are so many projects that need to be done, and I think Infosys is doing very well in that space.
Right, but the overall numbers, are you happy with the numbers? Were they in line with your estimates?
Yes, actually they were a little ahead of my estimates, but I think the whole idea is if you look at the macro backdrop, where the layoffs are happening, where the funding for IT projects is stagnant to down, and in that situation, Infosys has done very, very well.
Right, okay. Talk to us more about the guidance. Do you think, the street was expecting around 50 basis point increase in the guidance over here, and I think it has come largely in line to a little bit ahead of what the estimates were. So do you think the stock price will not move because the 50 basis point increase was already baked in? What do you think about the stock price reaction, coming straight to the point?
I think the stock price could move up from in mid to long term. And the reason I say that is there are some projects which are in the pipeline which are more AI related, and they command a higher premium in terms of time and material pricing. So if you put those things in context, of course, the guidance they have provided is almost in line, but what is the relief is they did not reduce the guidance, because there is a fear in the industry that some companies may not do well. So I think it's a big relief, and also I think the next quarter, not the one that they have guided for, but I think they would maintain, or maybe they can increase it slightly, because I think that is what is happening in the industry is the project execution along with the type of projects that they are engaged in. I think Infosys will do very well in mid to long term, and the stock will go up.
Right. One last question from my side. Well, the deal wins, the last deal wins have come in at $2.4 billion versus $4.1 billion last quarter. And we generally view this on a quarter-on-quarter basis. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
See, they vary. I think in today's situation, I think it may not be appropriate to really look at that granular level. Because as I'm mentioning, is the macro conditions are very, very brutal. I mean, at least in the USA and Europe. So if you keep that context in place, and then if you look at the numbers they have printed, it's very impressive.
Right. Thanks for that, Mr. Chaudhary. We'll get back to you. But joining us to discuss about Wipro numbers is Mr. Omkar, the Senior Research Analyst of IT at Axis Securities. Thanks for joining us on the show. Your first take on Wipro, please.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the Wipro numbers are below than our expectations. Only the PAT they have on the bottom line they have reported the strong numbers, but I believe in terms of revenue growth momentum, in terms of the margin, and also in terms of the guidance that they have given is below my expectation. And I believe as compared to the last time, it's weaker demonstration of the execution of the deals that they are, having it.
Right, so that's what I think Street is already believing, that Wipro has been underperforming the estimates since a very long time now. But do you bet on the new management talking about the turnaround story? What's your take there?
I mean, definitely, the management has been changed, and but I believe they will also take some time, to turn around. But in a current position that the Wipro is demonstrating the deals, and the execution part is lagging as compared to the peers. I believe it will take much longer time than expected. After appointing a new management.
Right. Mr. Omkar, just one thing that you would want to highlight is the problem for Wipro specifically. Look, we understand that conversion of deal wins into revenue, etc., macroeconomic challenges, etc., is what is affecting the sector as a whole. So that's true for all the IT companies. But that one or two things that you would highlight that Wipro should address specifically in their own case.
I mean, I believe your engagement with the client and the ramp up of the deals, the getting execution and of the work. I mean, that is the thing that maybe as compared to the Infosys, Excel Tech, and the TCS, the Wipro is being lagging in. So that might the part of an improvement where they can engage and penetrate more business from the clients.
Right. So client-specific engagement is what should be reviewed. Okay. Let's talk about the banking space, the space from which majority of the IT companies get their revenues from. Well, Infosys has reported a strong, healthy growth over here. However, TCS largely had a muted kind of growth, but Wipro has also reported around 3% QOQ constant currency growth over here. So do you think BFSI is reviving for the sector as a whole?
Yes, definitely. I mean, even on the HCL Tech management has also seen and revival in the BFSI part. So maybe after the rate cut, there is some uncertainty elimination and stabilizing of the macroeconomic factors that were, impacting the BFSI sector is now settling down. And I believe it's more of, positive sign because majority of the large cap companies have the largest exposure towards the vertical. And with the revival in the vertical, that might, impact on the revenue growth momentum in the forthcoming quarters. So it's being a quite positive thing as from the Indian IT services as a whole.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Omkar and Mr. Chaudhary. One last question to both of you. Your top picks in the top tier segment, starting with Mr. Chaudhary.
I think Infosys will do very well, and I think I'll stick with that.
You don't prefer TCS because that's what that's what majority of the analysts are betting on.
I think if you look at the portfolio of services offered and the kind of certifications the employees have, I think Infosys is very well positioned to pick up the AI implementations in almost every sector. So I think if you look 2 to 3 quarters out, I think Infosys is the best positioned company.
Right. Got that. Mr. Omkar, your top picks quickly, please.
Yeah, mine is also from the large pack. Infosys looks to be a better bet, and because you get a valuation comfort as compared to the TCS, the Infosys is being consistently performing well from the past 2 quarters, and if may put one as a strong leader in the revenue growth momentum in FY25. So you and also have the capability of in newer technologies like the generative AI. They have also launched a Project Maximus to capitalize the demand. So that might have looks to be a lucrative bet. So Infosys is my top picks here.
Right. Infosys is our analyst's top pick is what we have. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the show. Thank you, Mallica, as well, for having us with you today.
Thank you for that, Rucha. Now, the markets cracked today. Bajaj Auto led the fall. All sectors were in the red except for IT stocks. Harsh Sayata brings you a wrap of today's market action.
Not just did we break the 25K mark in trade today, we also broke 24,900, and in fact we've closed below 24,800. Clear weakness, 1% lower, and if you can pull up the intraday chart, except for that first half hour, it was a very, very range-bound day of trade. So after that first hour or so of trade, we've largely traded in a tight band, and there's been no major volatility in that sense. But it's just the weakness has just compounded as the day has gone on. Let's pull up the heat map for the Nifty 50, and what counters we'll see largely, at least dominating that top band in the green, is the IT pack. Outside of HCL Tech, very, very mild gains. You saw a good day for TCS. Even a Tech Mahindra, Infosys did fairly well given the kind of day we've had. So that's how it played out. The bottom part of that pile was dominated by earnings. Bajaj Auto, Nestle coming out. Bajaj Auto decentish, but just with regard to commentary was a bit of a dampener. And of course we saw that percolate onto the other players in the auto pack as well. And we saw Nestle as well. Again, a soft set of numbers. Growth just not there, and margins came off quite sharply. Let's pull up the advanced decline to determine the breadth first off. The breadth was weak and just got weaker as the day went by. That's how the breadth was. And if we can pull up, the heat map with regard to sectors, we'll see that IT was the only speck of green in an otherwise sea of red. There you go. And outside of that, we spoke about auto, but even realty was in the red, 3.5+% lower, but no single sector spared. Pretty much all sectors in the red. Let's pull up the BSE 500 list of top gainers and top losers. there you go. You'll see some earnings candidates on the right side of your screen. The left side dominated by one-off names. Again, Infosys was one of those earnings candidates. Infy will declare earnings today. So keep your eye out on that IT pack. It's going to be an interesting Friday of trade.
Well, thank you for that, Harsh. Now, here's a view on what sectors to buy into in this market. Vikas Prasad of MNG Investments spoke about where he's putting his money. Take a look.
This year was more split between CVs and two-wheelers. If you look at healthcare, we have consolidated our pharma holdings, we have consolidated our hospital holdings, but we have exposure to those as well. There's no pattern when it comes to market cap. We're just looking at long-term prospective returns. So in the pharma sector, we have some exposure to companies that are sub $3 billion market cap, and then we own some that are much larger. Hospitals, we own the large hospital companies, but then also some of the small ones as well. So it's a pretty diverse portfolio. We own the metals companies, but again, we've been through this exercise of culling some of the smaller positions and concentrating our capital on what we think are leaders. What is a clear gap in the portfolio, but by design, is consumer staples. The first few days after the election results came out in June, there was a big rally in staples. We used that rally to reduce our exposure. We have more zero weights in that sector than in any other, and we've consolidated our holding. But it's still into consumer-facing names. It's just not consumer as is defined by the staples companies. So if you look at the air conditioning sector, for example, we are there. If you look at hotels, if you look at real estate, we are very much exposed to the Indian consumer, but more towards the high end now than before, and much less to the staples sector.
Well, there have been a rush of earnings. Subhana joins in with a breakdown of the second quarter earnings of Axis Bank. Subhana, what are you picking up on the earnings?
Yes, so Axis Bank's net profit has actually, surpassed analyst expectations. The net profit is up 18% on year and 15% on quarter to 6,918 crores. The NII is in line. This is despite, higher provisions. Analysts were actually expecting lower provisions for the bank, but the bank has, the provisions are, higher on a year-on-year and on a quarter-on-quarter basis. And however, NIMs, the net interest margins of the bank are slightly lower than what was expected. It is in line with what analysts had expected. Also, loan growth is largely in line with the expectations, and deposit growth is also in line. Now we have actually Ashutosh Mishra, who is the head of research at Ashika Stock Broking, here with us, who would help us understand the earnings much better.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. So for Axis, the number was above expectation. And if you look at the number, the primary two reasons for the same is higher other income and lower effective tax rate. So higher other income is primarily due to recognition of the income on investment portfolio, and the lower effective tax rate is primarily due to they have won one of the tax dispute. I think 500 some crore was there, the number. So these two is the reason where they have beaten the number of the street. But if you look at pure NI front or provision fund, on both the front, they have disappointed the market.
But so we also wanted to understand, what do you think is the reason behind the sharp jump in the on-quarter rise in provisions?
So yes, that need to be understood from the management, because overall consensus was around 15 to 1600 rupees of the 15 to 1800 between that consensus was there for the provision expenses, and actual provision expenses is higher than the last quarter. So this normalization of the credit cost is not happening in the bank. Basically, it is happening at the upper end of the guidance, if we say. So, it will be very important to understand what will be the trajectory for the provision in the 2H FY25.
This is also despite the fact that credit cost has come down for the bank, right? And how are you looking at margins?
So net interest margin numbers still I have not ready, but given the performance of the NIMs front and the stronger loan growth is clearly indicating that NIMs has been declined on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But actual number I have not seen.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Subhana. Now, today is the final day of Hyundai Motor India IPO. The IPO has witnessed a sudden surge of interest as it has been subscribed 2.38 times so far. It was subscribed 18% on the first day and 42% on the second day. Hyundai has set a price band of 1,865 and 1,960 rupees per share for its 3-day IPO. The company put out a sale of 14.2 crore shares and aims to raise up to 28,000 crore rupees. Hyundai surpassed Life Insurance Corporation's 21,000 crore rupees, making it India's biggest IPO so far. Now, sources from the Ministry of Civil Aviation revealed that a new law is being prepared to punish proxy callers for bomb attacks. This comes amid a surge in bomb threats and delay in flights. This law will take strict action against false or misleading calls related to aviation safety and operations. My colleague Mallica Mishra is here with a report.
Flights and airports across the country are continuously receiving the bomb threat from last few days. Now the Civil Aviation Ministry is strict regarding this. Sources from the Civil Aviation Ministry is saying that Ministry is preparing a new law for the false caller. In this, action will be taken against the false and misleading calls related to safety and operation of the aircraft. Sources saying the new law will also ensure the strict punishment those who make false calls. Not only this, apart from that, there will also be a provision to put the false caller in the no-fly list, which may be applicable for many years. Sources saying the new law will ensure the strict monitoring and response to prevent incidents that jeopardize travel and national security. At present, the ministry is consulting with the law department regarding this law.
Well, that's all the time we had on this edition of Profit 360, but stay tuned to NDTV Profit for more news and updates.